Welcome to Darker Things, this series that dives into the chilling depths of history's most disturbed events and personalities.
Welcome to Darker Things. My name is Malcolm Spade and I will be your host for today's episode. In our first episode, we looked at David Koresh's childhood when he was known as Vernon Howell and examined what might have contributed to him seeking out the role of a religious leader. In our second video, we examined the people and events that shaped the Branch Davidians, the group that would take him in and he would eventually lead. When we left you, a young, broken-spirited Vernon Howell, not yet known as David Koresh, has traveled to Waco, Texas in search of a prophet. And he finds one in Lois Roden. Unlike those that came before her, her teachings are focused on the feminine aspects of the Holy Spirit and not apocalyptic or foreshadowing the return of Jesus for his church. Perhaps, it was her softer worldview is what led her to accept Vernon Howell into the fold. By all accounts, Vernon Howell was a mild-mannered young man. And if a picture speaks 1,000 words, this picture tells me that he was socially awkward. He probably had a desire to people please and lacked self-confidence. So how did he become a leader? Lois Roden would groom Vernon Howell to be a leader and teacher of the Branch Davidians. Not only that, but despite their age difference, she would groom Vernon Howell to be her new romantic partner. Cupid must have been blind. And so the winds of fate were in motion and Vernon Howell becomes a respected teacher in the Branch Davidian community. So much so that Vernon Howell and Lois Roden are the representatives chosen to travel to Israel by the Branch Davidians. While in Israel, around 1985, Vernon Howell says he is visited by the Holy Spirit. He says in that moment he was transformed into David Koresh, the Lamb, and that he understands all the books of the Bible from Genesis to Revelation as if he inspired them or authored them himself. Upon his return from Israel and his transformation, David Koresh began to distance himself from Lois Roden. He said he was given mandates by God to find his bride. Koresh befriended and starting winning the confidence of Perry Jones, a prominent leader within the Branch Davidian community with 2 young daughters. It was only a matter of time before David would marry his daughter Rachel, who was only a teenager when they tied the knot. David Koresh and Rachel would have 2 children together. Flash forward, and Lois Roden dies of breast cancer, setting the stage for her son George Roden to take the office of the prophet. But things are different with this transition than they were when Lois rose to power. George never had his mom's full support that she lent instead to David Koresh. And Koresh asserts that he is the Lamb and that he is the one that should lead the Branch Davidians going forward. The 2 men, each with people in their camp supporting them, are at odds with one another. George Roden's men convince David Koresh and his group to leave under the threat of gunfire. For now, George Roden appears to be the prophet, but his position is still not uncontested. David Koresh meets with George privately and convinces Roden that the way they can resolve the dispute is through a measure of faith. That the one between the 2 of them that can exhume body and bring it back to life will be the heir to the office of prophet. George Roden is tricked. After attempting what Koresh suggested, people in his own camp now view George as crazy. David Koresh and his camp return and there is an attempt to take out George Roden by gunfire. In the end, George is put in a state hospital, charged with attempted murder of another member and David and his camp, while exonerated endure a trial for their attempt to take George Roden's life. Now Koresh is in power, setting the stage for a tragic end which we will examine in our next episode. Until next time, this is your host Malcolm Spade reminding you that once you enter the dark, you may never be the same.